podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Jobs Ohio. Have you ever had a moment where you just knew you were ready to leave that big coastal city life behind? Whether it was an especially memorable traffic jam or losing your fourth bid on a house, the folks at Jobs Ohio want to hear about that last straw moment. Ohio is ready to welcome anyone who's looking for an all-around just better place to be. Share your story on Twitter with the hashtag #LastStrawStory.
This is an ad for Roundup for Lawns. It kills weeds down to the root without harming your lawn. It works on crabgrass, dandelions, clover. It works on weeds with names you can't even pronounce. It's Roundup for Lawns. When used as directed, always read and follow pesticide label directions.
Hello and welcome to Humans of Speedway. I'm Ian Brannan, and in this episode, speaking to another rider marking a special occasion at the start of the 2022 season. Stuart Robson has had a career in Speedway spanning over 20 years, and in that time he's ridden for some great names in British Speedway, including the Newcastle Diamonds, Coventry Bees, Middlesborugh Bears, Hull Vikings, Rye House Rockets, Lakeside Hammers, and finishing his career at the Redcar Bears, which is the venue for his farewell meeting, which takes place on the 1st of April, and he's got a stellar lineup in store. So I'm looking forward to finding out more about Stuart's career and that farewell meeting as well, which we'll begin by talking about, because it's been a long time coming, hasn't it, Stuart? Because originally your farewell meeting was due to take place in 2020. We all know what happened in 2020. Lockdown occurred and it all went on the back burner, but finally you're here, and finally you get to have your farewell meeting.
Yes. Originally 2 years ago I was going to do a pairs meeting, and we changed that. It's just because it was more simple. I did obviously have a full lineup last time. I can't remember how many pairs it was now. We had it all set up, and then obviously 6 or whatever days before the event was supposed to happen, we had lockdown. So start again 2 years later, and yes, we've decided we've gone with just a normal open meeting, 16 rider individual, and yeah, some riders are the same, and there's some other riders who weren't in the original lineup, and obviously vice versa, riders who were originally in, maybe one or two have retired or can't make it for one reason or another. So yeah, but I'm very pleased with the lineup again, as I was with the first time round. Very pleased. I've got a lot of the younger youth riders, the younger riders, coming through, and then obviously got GB youth guys again. So I've tried to put a bit of a open field where there's a bit of quite a mixture of established riders and some of the newer riders coming through.
Yeah, let's have a look at the lineup then in full. As you say, it could be a championship riders final or something, really, when you look at the lineup. Chris Harris, Craig Cook, Danny King, Charles Wright, Michael Palmtoft, Richie Worrell, Ulrich Ostergaard, Ricky Wells, Simon Lambert, Joe Thompson, Jordan Jenkins, Ben Basso, Dan Thompson, Paul Stark, Josh Orty and Leon Flint. I mean, that's a great lineup, I think, there, for obviously Redcar fans are going to have a particular interest in it because it's on their home track and some of their riders involved as well. But, for anybody as a neutral of British Speedway, some great names there of, as you say, of past, present and future.
Definitely, yes. That was the idea. You've got to try and cater for all, who would like to go and watch it. So you got the more established riders with the likes of Chris, and Richie Worrell's been around a few years now. I know he's sort of not that long in the sport, really, considering the level he's got to. And obviously a few of the other guys, and then gone with the younger lot as well. We've tried to trying to bring people in from around the clubs of the northeast and surrounding areas, really, because obviously I don't know how far people will travel. With it being on a Friday, I was ideally wanted a weekend track. I wanted a Saturday, not a weekend track, sorry. I wanted a Saturday day to have it, but I just couldn't do it. I'd have been running against Berwick, and the last thing I want to do is run against another club. So we went with the Friday, which is obviously Redcar's day anyway. So yeah, hopefully we'll get a few travelling fans. We've got some former Redcar riders as well as current Redcar riders. It's obviously former Newcastle and current Newcastle. Same with Berwick, one or two ex-Workington. Scunthorpe, with Josh. And it's pretty good feel. I'm hoping we can get a few travelling fans. There's going to be pretty good lineup. There should be some good racing. Redcar is without a doubt one of the best tracks in the country for racing on, and they've got Johnny Swales doing the track there now. And I haven't been in the last couple of seasons, so haven't seen what it's like, but I know how good Johnny is at doing tracks, and it should be a really good night.
Well, I was at Redcar last weekend, and there was a practice session happening there, and the track looked absolutely perfect. It was the first time they've had bikes on it this year, but it looked brilliant. So I think, as you say, it's always a well-prepared surface, and no different this year. I think it was very, very wet a couple of weeks ago, but it's dried out really nicely over the last week or two, and we've got good weather. I'm in the northeast now, and the weather's sunny, and hopefully it stays that way over the next couple of weeks and everything will be perfect.
Hopefully, yes. Like you said, it was wet. I spoke to Johnny Swales recently, and he said the track's been pretty wet, so they're hoping to get on it to get it dried out. And like you just said, they obviously did, and they had the practice. I think was a press and practice day they had, because it's their first meeting next week, isn't it? A week today. They
had it was the launch of the British Speedway Network, the live stream service for the championship on Saturday, and then they had the Redcar press and practice on the Sunday. So there's been a few laps done on it now.
Oh, definitely. So there would have been a lot there. So if it's held up to that after a long winter, then it's good. It's obviously looking very good. So yes, fingers crossed we'll have some good weather on the day of the meeting, and it'll be good for everyone.
Yeah, fingers crossed. That's the only bit that's out of your hands, really, and it's the same for all of these fixtures throughout the whole season. I suppose we're in the lap of the weather, but fingers crossed for this because it's a great lineup. Now the date then is the 1st of April, 7:30 the start time, and as you mentioned, it's individual meeting, straight 20 heats, a bit like a Grand Prix sort of feel to it, I guess. Then with 20 heats, semi-final and grand final as the format, and then you've got the Young Lions coming as well, which we spoke to Neil Vatcher on this podcast a few weeks ago, and he was saying how excited he is for the lads that are coming through, not just on the 500cc's, but the 250s and 125s as well. You know, things are pretty promising in British Speedway at that level, and it'd be great for people to see some of this talent coming through.
Yeah, definitely. There's been quite a lot of progress made over the last, 10 or so years. They've been really up the game in bringing the youth through, and it's looking good. It's looking good for the future. It just hopefully Speedway will survive as a sport in general, because it's still on a bit of a decline in the UK at the moment, and there's obviously other things going on in the world that are more important. So it is a bit of a hard time for the sport, but fingers crossed we'll have a few more good world class riders coming through. You know, we've got Dan Bewley's came through now to join up with Lambert and Woofy in the on the world stage. So yeah, it's going to be good if we can get a few more like that through. There is a few promising youngsters coming from what I've been told who are there on their way.
Yeah, this 250 crop, I think Neil Vatcher was very excited about some of the riders in there, so certainly worth watching out. They're probably names that you don't know right now, but give it 10, 15 years or so, you know, you could be looking at GP stars of the future there is the general thinking. So make a note of those names and remember where you saw them first. So people can just rock up on the gate then. You don't need to book tickets in advance. £18 adults, concessions £16, 11 to 16-year-olds £5, and under 11s go free. So that's pretty good value, I'd say, for 28s, the semi-final and the grand final, and all the other entertainment besides. It's a great deal, I think.
Yes, yeah, it was. I mean, it's pretty hard to try and sort out admission fees and things. So we kind of went along the lines of the Redcar ones. We've changed it ever so slightly. So we tried to keep it as close to theirs as possible. And obviously there's a lot of costs go with any meeting, and you've got to try and cover your costs. And yeah, rock up on the night, pay on the gate. There's no tickets pre-sold, so it's cash or card on the night on the gate. And yeah, hopefully we'll get a good crowd, so get there early. and come and see a few of the guys in the pits and whatnot.
Yeah, and it'd be great to get people that have followed you from around your career as well, wasn't it? And I know that you're talking about the North East clubs, and obviously you used to ride for Newcastle, and also Redcar, but notably as well, Hull in the past, which is not too far away really, and maybe if people fancy making the trip up from Coventry as well. Of course, you spent a long time there, and any old Bees fans fancy getting a sight of the meeting you've organised, I'm sure they'd love to come along and support you if they can.
Yeah, it would be nice to see some of the old Coventry faces. You know, obviously the speedway here isn't around anymore. Well, the stadium is still there, but it's just not functioning. And I haven't been to speedway much over the last few years, and it would be good to see some old faces. You know, because obviously I was there a long time, and you got to know a lot of people there.
And what are you going to be doing on the night? Are you on the bike and doing some laps? What's the plan?
To be honest, I don't actually know what I'm going to be doing right now. At the moment, I hadn't planned on doing any laps on a speedway bike. I literally haven't set foot over a bike since I retired at the end of 2018 there. So if I do some laps, it will be my first time back on a bike. I don't really know. I haven't sort of organised anything. I hadn't really thought too much about it. I've been working so much lately. I don't really get a lot of time to do anything else other than work, and I'm working away at the moment. So when I get home, all I want to do is try and catch up on a few jobs I've not been able to do, and see the family and whatever else. I don't get a lot of time on organising the meetings or anything. I've been really lucky to have a couple of people who've been extremely good helping me with the organisation, like with Martin Coleman and Chrissy. That I wouldn't have been able to do it without them. I'd have still been back at the first stage of it all without them too.
It's a big job, isn't it? I know that speaking to Josh Orty and Lewis Kerr as well recently have been putting their meetings on, and of course Paul Ackroyd with the Ben Fund as well. That it's a big old job, and there's all so much stuff that comes out of the woodwork that you probably didn't even take into account at the start. You probably think of the meeting and getting your riders and all that, but that's just the start of it, isn't it? It's a big job, the role of a promoter.
It is. It's bigger than what you think. I mean, if you're doing it week in, week out, it probably becomes a bit easier. But just to run a one-off meeting like this, there's a lot to it. And there's more to it than what you realise, because if you don't do it, you don't realise what it is to it. So when you start looking into it, you keep thinking, you keep realising there's more and more to it. And especially when you're trying to get each rider sponsored and each race sponsored and all the tyres, all the sponsorship things that go with it. It's not just a case of asking for it. You've got to then chase it up. You've got to put packages together for people. You've got to put packages together for riders. You've got to organise the catering. Also, I mean, luckily, again, the stadium have been extremely good with me. The promotion up at Redcar have been very good and very helpful with helping with all of the stadium side of things, which is, the things they do week in, week out. It's like the things like first aid, and they've organised the tyres for me. And I obviously will just cover the cost of them, but they've arranged for it all to be there. Stadium staff, track staff, bar staff, all that type of stuff. There's so much more to it than what you realise. Insurances and things like that as well. You've got to get that and cover things like. And then you've got referee. But I had Jim McGregor contacted me about the referee quite early on. He's pretty on the ball with that as well. He asked who I would like, and he organised that. So there's been a lot of people who have stepped up and helped me, some in small ways, some in big ways, and it all goes towards the big picture at the end of it, and everything helps. So I've been extremely lucky with that side of things. But yes, there's an awful lot of more than what you realise.
And there's ways that fans can get involved, even if they aren't attending. I know you're auctioning some stuff off as well, aren't you? Like the race jackets, I think, or things like that, that people can get to keep. And I know some of them are already sold, I believe, but that's another way that fans can get involved, even if they are attending or even if they're not.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. We've with the sponsorship packages, we did it with rider sponsorship, where that person who sponsored the rider will get the race jacket, But normally you will auction race jackets off and things afterwards. So what we did is we're having a couple of sets done. So the person who sponsored that particular rider will still get it, and it'll be autographed, and it'll be theirs to keep. And then we'll do the same again, but we'll do it so we'll have to get them so they're both worn on the night. And then there's a couple sold, which is really good. I mean, I think they only put this out yesterday. Martin did on the social media, and one or two have sold already, which has been extremely good. And there's been quite a bit of a response on it, so really pleased with that. It's excellent.
No, that is excellent, and it's good stuff for people to own as well. A little bit of a memento. It's especially race worn stuff. It can be hard to find the genuine article as well. And I think for people who are collectors of any Speedway memorabilia, then it's always good to have that kind of thing, especially if you know who's worn it as well. Because sometimes you get these race bibs that are on eBay and it says a number 7 on the back of it, and you've got no idea who it belonged to 20 years ago. Whereas at least you know who's worn that particular one.
That's right, yes. I mean, you normally, quite often on team race jackets, you'll have your name on the back so you can see it. A lot of the time it's not as well, though. With these, I did think about getting riders' names on, but if someone drops out at the last moment and another rider has to step in, they're going to be riding with another rider's name on the back. So I've gone without that. So it is just numbers, but what we can do is we'll have it, will certainly be autographed, and if whoever has the race jacket, if they want to write on it the date and who wore it and what it was about and everything else, then that's up to them. And then it's then they'll never forget what it was or who wore it.
It's really important for riders as well to test themselves against good competition. And so whilst it is also a fun event, this stage of the season, April, a few weeks away from the Premiership season starting, but for the Championship, it's about to launch that weekend. The next day is the first two fixtures are the following night to your meeting. So for the likes of Leon Flint and Chris Harris, they're in league action the following night. This is the last sort of pre-season friendly as such, isn't it?
It is, yes, and it is really important, like you say, to test yourself against other riders in race situations. Because practice, anyone can go out and do practice, and you feel great because you're out there on your own and you haven't ridden for a few months, because it's been winter time. So you go out there and you feel great. You think, yeah, this is perfect. But then you put yourself up against other riders, and you kind of realize, oh, maybe it wasn't quite as quick as it needed to be, or whatever it might be. It was a bit. The engine was a bit too strong there, or not. Whatever. There's all sorts of clutch setups and things. So it's perfect. Testimonials and the like are ideal because you get your costs covered for your practice. I mean, you don't make money out of it. Don't get me wrong. Each rider gets themselves a couple £100, and that covers their costs to be there, basically. So it's basically a paid practice, whereas normally if you go to your normal practice, you're covering all the costs yourself. You don't get the clubs don't cover your cost unless it's a race meeting. So it's good to have these kind of things. You can go out, you can blow the cobwebs off, you can really push yourself, but not too much because you've got to. It is a fun event, like you said. It's all just part and parcel of the pre-season training, so to speak. It's pre-season friendly. It's a bit like that, That's what you kind of can put it down to. And then, yes, like you say, the following day, Berwick's first meeting. It's the start of the season, the start of the launch of the coverage that you were just saying about what Jitendra Duffel and Martin Hunter are doing for the putting it all out onto the internet and stuff as well. So yeah, that should be a big event as well, and a big day for hopefully for the sport, and hopefully this new webcast or whatever it's called is gonna prove successful and be good for the sport.
It's going to be really good, and I say that with a vested interest, because you may have read who the presentation team are going to be for the matches on the British Speedway Network, and I'm pleased to say that I'm one of them, and I'm going to be commentating on these fixtures, and feel hugely honoured that they've asked me to do this. And I'm going to be joined, though, by Ollie Allen, joint Great Britain team manager, and of course ex-rider himself, and he's won trophies at the top level of the sport across British Speedway. So he'll be offering his insight, of course, World Championship team manager with Great Britain. And we're also going to have with us to present the show, if you like, and do interviews in the pits and so on. We've got Hayley Bromley, who's the centre green announcer at Bellevue, and of course hosted the Speedway of Nations at Bellevue last year as well at the stadium. We've got Paul Bowen, who just retired from Speedway, but he rode for the Bellevue Colts for the last few seasons, and Lee Kilby, who is an ex-promoter, son of a Swindon legend, but championship-winning promoter at Swindon as well. So between us, hopefully, we'll bring some great coverage and great insight. And it's going to be a bit different to probably what you know. So we're going to try and get a bit of extra access and try and bring you a bit more insight into what happens in the pits in between the meetings. With Ollie's insight, try and get in the mind of the managers, the team managers, what they may be thinking and what maybe they're going to be doing as well. So it's really exciting and can't wait to bring you the first meeting. Berwick versus Birmingham, and of course now Birmingham signing Adam Ellis. Berwick have got Bomber. It's going to be an exciting meeting to kick things off, and then they come thick and fast every week then from right through the season. It sounds
good, a good thing. I would love to have been able to have my meeting on there myself, because I've got friends around the world who would probably like to see it, like in Australia and whatnot. But unfortunately, it was being launched a day later. But yeah, and like you say, you're going to get a chance to see a lot of tracks that you wouldn't normally get to, whether it be up at Edinburgh or like you say, at Newcastle or Berwick, whatever it might be. You don't get them on TV. It's very often. I know Berwick has been on TV, but I don't know if Newcastle ever has, or Redcar, or Edinburgh. Glasgow might have been once or twice, but. There's other clubs around the country. I'm just saying the northern ones because that's obviously the ones that's off the top of my head. It would be great. There'll be the likes of Plymouth as well. I don't think Plymouth's been on TV, and it's a great little track down there. It's tiny, but I loved it when I rode there. The few meetings I rode there, it was brilliant. The championship level of racing has really upped its game over the last probably 10 or 15 years, maybe more. I don't know. It's got stronger and stronger, and because you can ride in two leagues in this country now, it's really helped. It's helped bring the championship up closer to the Premiership level. It was a good move, and what makes it more difficult now though is the jump from National League up to Premiership is now a really large jump. The standard is although the National League is getting better and better all the time as well, it is quite a large jump from one to the next, because you've got riders who have been in GPs in the championship, and all of a sudden you go from riding National League and you're lining up next to a former GP rider or a British, former British champions and all that kind of thing. And you think, oh yeah, okay, this is a bit different, but that's the sort of only probably the hardest step to make now. Once you get into the championship, you get established, I think it's probably a bit easier to step up into the Premiership from there.
Yeah, it's been mentioned before about this big gap between the two, the youth leagues, and then you eventually work your way up to the National League, and then you go from being maybe a heat leader there to, as you say, lining up against, like last year, for example, Hans Andersen or Chris Harris or Scott Nichols, and that's largely the case this year as well, with the exception of Hans.
Exactly, right.
These really seasoned pros, then it's like, well, how are you supposed to have that level of education overnight? It is a bit of a thing, but at the same time, I suppose, you find out what's required, and maybe it does drive you on, and you learn by being chucked in at the deep end, maybe. Yeah,
you do. That's how you learn. You race to the level of the rider you race against. That's how I look at it. And if you race at top level against top level riders, you will up your game to that level. Or if you're in the mid level, you will probably, unless you're exceptional, you'll probably stay at the mid level unless you go up another level. And that's the way I look at it. That's how it seems to work. But you've got to start somewhere as well. That's the other thing. You learn from mistakes. You learn from other riders, and going up against these guys or being teammates with them, all that sort of thing. You ask questions. You watch. You listen. You learn that way, and that's what it's all about. We've all done it. We've all been in the same boat. The likes of Scott Nichols. He was once that person who was just coming into the league for the first time, And he was looking up at the other riders thinking, wow, I've got Tony Ricardo next to me, or whoever it might have been, and you've just got to try not to let it faze you, try not to let it think about it, and just go out and do what you do. And if you can have that approach and not worry about others, that is a big help as well.
Stuart Robson, my guest in this episode of Humans of Speedway. He's getting ready to celebrate his farewell meeting, which is going to be happening on the 1st of April. But coming next, we'll find out about Stuart's early days. It's a fairly easy answer to the question as to how he got involved in Speedway, having his dad and brother already involved in the sport. But we'll find out more about Stuart's story next on Humans of Speedway.
Ever wondered where all the Quiznos went? Or how much a Chick-fil-A owner makes? What about how exactly someone gets started with owning a Planet Fitness? The Wolf knows. The Wolf of Franchises is an industry insider who breaks down the everyday franchises you know and love and introduces you to ones you never knew existed. Subscribe to the Wolf of Franchises newsletter at workweek.com/brand/the Wolf of Franchises.
Hey, Philly comedy fans! Last call for tickets to see India's biggest stand-up comedian turned global comedy sensation, Veer Das. Veer is bringing his Wanted World Tour to the Fillmore, Philadelphia on Sunday, April 3rd, and you're all invited. But you better hurry. You don't want to miss this hilarious evening of Veer's one-of-a-kind take on life and the world. So, grab your tickets while you still can at Ticketmaster.com.
Welcome back to Humans of Speedway. Stuart Robson, my guest in this episode. Now, usually I ask the question, how did you get involved in Speedway? And usually it's an answer to do with family. That is no different for Stuart Robson because I don't really have to ask the question because Stuart's dad, John Robson, was a rider in the 1970s. His brother, Scott, was also a rider, and so sort of natural that you would follow in the family footsteps, really, Stuart, isn't it?
Yes, I didn't have to. It was the option was there for me. If I wanted to do it, I could, and if I didn't have to do it. But yeah, of course, I loved Speedway. I went from being born. My dad used to ride then, and we used to go to the local tracks down to Middlesborugh and Newcastle week in, week out. And I did a bit of grass track. So when I was a kid, I did riding, obviously the same as Speedway, but on grass. So it's what I did then. And I used to love riding the bike. All I wanted to do was ride, and that was it. And I enjoyed watching. There was a lot of riders there who obviously I knew through the family because my dad knew them and whatever else. So it was always good. I always find it more interesting to watch if you know someone that's involved. I kind of have and you kind of got a bit more interest in it then. That's like my opinion on it. So when if I'm watching a meeting on TV, if someone like, say, Danny King or whoever might be in it, it gives me that bit more interest in the meeting. And because I knew a lot of riders then, it was especially the local guys like Martin Dixon, who would be riding from Middlesbrough, and whoever else it was that was riding around at that time. It was great to watch them. But when you're a kid, it's all just an adventure, isn't it? You go and run around the stadium, you're watching a bit of racing, you're playing in the dirt. It was like heaven. It was perfect.
And your dad is John Robson, so people might remember him from the 70s, I think, when he was racing, wasn't it, mostly? But And you grew up in Sunderland. Now I'm doing this interview from Sunderland, and you're now in Coventry, aren't you? Because I thought, you might be local. We could maybe sort of meet up or something. But you are now down in the Midlands. But whereabouts in Sunderland are you from? Which bit?
I'm from Southwick. I stayed up there till 1998 is when I moved. From Southwick, right next to where all the shipyards are and whatnot. But yeah, it would have actually been a lot better if we would have done this face to face. It would have. I think it could have come across a bit better, not come across. It would have been more interesting to do and just easier for me because I'm not very good with computers, and I didn't know how to get this set up, as you know.
You managed. But no, Southwick, that's like proper Sunderland, right in the heart of Sunderland. For those that don't know, as you say, right by the shipyards and all that, not far from the city centre. And so you mentioned there that you were involved as a youngster, got involved doing grass track, which is a real traditional way of getting into Speedway, as far as I think. British speedway riders some of the great speedway riders have come from the grass track scene, and we don't see it quite so much now. It's not as big as it used to be, and maybe more come from motocross, but a great place to learn your craft. But when riders switch over to the shale, they often find that it's like a billiard table compared to what they've been riding on the grass. Did you find that and think, oh, actually, this is a bit more comfortable?
Well, I was probably a bit too young to have that feeling, because I sort of packed up grass track when I was around 8-year-old. So I didn't start speedway until I was 14 properly. So I had the motocross in the meantime, funnily enough, as well. But I think a lot of riders must notice that. Like you said, there is a lot of good riders who have past and present who have come from grass track. Back in my day, there was like Joe Screen, Gary Havelock, Gary Stead, Mark Laram, Carl Stoneward, Sean Wilson, loads of others. There's been so many. They all moved from grass to speedway, and were obviously extremely successful. And there's a few of the riders, like Chris Harris has been a grass track rider. Scott Nichols was a grass track rider at one point. James Wright, I think he still does a bit of grass, and I'm not sure who else. There will be some others, but I can't think off the top of my head who else does it. But yes, it's got to be. I mean, the grass tracks can be so rough. But you do have rear suspension on the bikes though, and the front forks work a bit better than the speedway ones, so they do have that little bit more give. But still, it's I think they have a larger back wheel, which I think they get more drive from. So I think speedway is quite a breeze from what I can gather compared to grass track.
Yeah, I think a lot of people found that, and I think it was Gary Havelock I spoke to, and he was like, "Oh, what have I been doing, wasting all my life on grass until now? Once he was on there, I'm never looking back. This is me. It's like far easier." But you made your British racing debut with Newcastle, and obviously that's very local to Sunderland. Sunderland, of course, did used to have its own team once upon a time, but you were probably missed out on that era. But Newcastle Diamonds, your first experience of proper league racing?
It was, yes, back in 1993. Gary Havelock's dad was in charge, Brian, actually, funnily enough, and we knew Brian from grass track days. I think Brian might have rode actually at one point. And yeah, we got in the teams. My brother joined the team from Berwick that year as well. And I turned 16 in November and started my first league race in the March, probably, as it would have been back then. And yeah, all I'd done was practice after the meetings and have open practice days at the local clubs, really. So it was quite an eye-opener for me getting to the tapes, and then all of a sudden I've got 3 professional riders next to me who most of them had been riding for a while, like we said before, and you think, wow, this is a bit different. So it was extremely difficult, but Newcastle stuck with me. I got there and I started scoring some points towards the end of the year. It took me a long time to do it, but better late than never, so to speak. So yes, it was definitely an eye-opener that season for me. My brother was doing quite well. I think he was all right. I mean, that was one of the things that I was quite fortunate. I didn't have to make all the mistakes he made before I started riding. We obviously learned a lot. My dad was always a big backer of ours, and he would always help us. And they made you learn as you go along all the time. So I didn't have to go through all of the learning curve they went through. So I had a bit of a head start on him in that respect. But yeah, it was back then. It was just fun. Like I said before, I just wanted to ride my bike every day if I could, and we did what we could, and we got through eventually. We did all right. It turned out good in the end.
Can you remember who you lined up against in your first heat? Is it sort of etched on your mind, that very first? Because it must have been a different level of adrenaline, I suppose, when you're coming down to the tapes for real, and the crowd there, and this is like a proper meeting. It's not a practice.
Do you know what? I actually have no idea. I would guess, hazard a guess, it was probably the meeting against Middlesborugh, or because they were obviously 2 local teams. But it could well have been against a Berwick team. Again, not too far away. But I don't know. I know that people like Stuart Swales were riding in the Middlesbrough team at the time, What number he was at, I don't know, but so he could have been someone who was next to me on the start line. I can't even remember who my teammate would have been at the moment. It might have been Stuart Parnaby, because I think he was in the Newcastle team in the first season. No, I don't actually know now. That's a good question, that, actually. I'd have to... I'm sure someone out there would know, and it would probably be... I'd have to go back to Newcastle fixtures and results from 1993. So, yes, might have to have a look at that.
Might be a bit earlier than... He might be predating Speedway updates there, I think. But, we could... I'm sure somebody probably... Somebody somewhere knows.
Someone will have a programme filled out, I'm sure.
Yeah, somebody will have the programme for sure. So you had a couple of seasons with Newcastle, and then things sort of moved on a little notch, didn't they, with your career then? Because the great name of Coventry Bees came into your life for the first time, and you had a couple of spells there. But, that's a different level of speedway. Newcastle's a great name, don't get me wrong, and one of the iconic names. Ivan Major used to ride for him, and all the rest. But the Coventry Bees at that time, in the top league and all the rest of it, that's a different kettle of fish. There, you must feel like you're achieving something to have had that call.
Absolutely. I'd done 2 seasons with Newcastle, not been the most successful. It'd been all right. My second season was better than my first season. And then, I get a call in the winter from Coventry, would you like to come and ride down here? And like, wow. Because obviously, Coventry at the time had Hans Nielsen riding for them. He was just retiring at the end of that season, and he didn't... my first season with Coventry in 1995, he wasn't there, but he did have a farewell meeting, I think. So yes, it was quite a step up as much as anything else. And yeah, it was getting there was part. Obviously, it was a long way away, and I didn't have. I used to have a van. I shared. Well, sorry, Scott used to have a van. I used to jump in and share my lift. That was how I used to get to the meetings. Obviously, we both rode to the same team, so it made sense. We double up because the travel expenses. You used to get 10 pence a mile, which back then probably just about covered your costs. Obviously, now it wouldn't go anywhere, but we'd try and help towards costs. We're not a wealthy family, and we never have been. So we literally had scraped together what we could get, and then riding that Coventry, I had to get my own transport. So my dad helped me out there, and he found an old Sierra estate. That was an old ear reg, and we folded the back seats down, laid a bike in the back, or got a bike rack, whichever it might have been, depending on the weather. And off we went to Coventry each week. So everyone's turning up in vans with all nice new bikes and fancy equipment, and I rock up with one bike on the back of a car, and I don't think people would say anything like that in a long time. But yeah, they welcomed me down there. It was good. Brian Anderson was captain. Paul Bentley was down there at the time as well, which I knew Paul from, obviously, local Northeast rider. Former grass track rider as well, Paul. So yeah, there was quite a good team. I think Simon Cross might have been there. Andy Smith, knew Andy from grass track. So that was good. Sean Tacey, I think he was a grass tracker as well. It was a good team. We went, and I can't remember if we had much success that year, but I enjoyed it. It was good. I started to score points. Okay, not hundreds, but I was getting there. I was getting better and better all the time. And then I got asked back again the following year, which was always good. So, you've done something right. But then after a few months, I crashed at Exeter, broke my collarbone, and then I got sort of let go from there and back up in the Northeast, joined Middlesborugh.
And that was Middlesbrough, and the old track that just next to the A19, where it's the college or something there now, isn't it? But again, a track that brings us so many memories, and the Middlesbrough team of that era is still fondly remembered, isn't it? As you were saying, people like Martin Dixon and so on, great names of the time. Absolutely,
yes. We were trying to get in the original meeting that we had Steve Wilcock coming to do some laps. Former, Middlesbrough legend he was. So, and Jeff Pusey was going to do they were going to do some match races for me, which was great, and I was really looking forward to that. But unfortunately, the way the way it's working out now, we haven't really got the time to add anything more to the track. We've got 22 heats plus four GB youth rides, and we've only got 2.5 hours to run the meeting, so we're really restricted on time. Whereas I think originally I had the meeting, it was either a Saturday or a Sunday now, I can't remember. So we weren't limited to time. We had as long as we wanted, and I think we were going to run an afternoon start, and it would have been able to put a bit of a better show on, and not just the normal race. And we could have put a few other attractions on for other riders, for other fans, for some older fans, and maybe tried to find a bit of new stuff for some of the younger fans as well. Whether we could have got a bit of, I had trials riding back at my testimonial in 2004, and the two guys who did it are from up there, from the Great Ayton area near Middlesborugh, and they were good. Like two really good trials riders, Dave Pye being one of them, who did a bit of speedway as well. And it was just something different to just try and add another bit of attraction on. We might be able to come up with something. I'm not really sure just yet, but like I said, we're really restricted on time, so we've got to be very careful what we do.
Yeah, sure, but a great name in Speedway as well, and Middlesbrough Bears, and now obviously they've moved not far down the road to this Redcar, but I think many people still see it as Middlesbrough Speedway. I mean, it is technically, I think, in Middlesbrough, isn't it? It's not far from the football ground, really. It's but again, Northeast Speedway. I think that Speedway in the Northeast is sort of a rich area for the sport when you consider Redcar, when you consider Newcastle and Berwick, and then previously, of course, I guess Workington in a way as well. You had that northern set of tracks, and there's even now still good competition between those sides in that area, and you rode for Hull as well, which is not too far down the road also.
Yeah, there's massive rivalry between the clubs. Friendly rivalry, but it's when I've ridden for both clubs, it kind of especially the amount of time I spent at Newcastle, and then when I was riding for Middlesbrough, it felt quite strange riding, or Redcar, sorry, it felt quite strange riding against Newcastle, but the rivalry is still there. You want to win, because you want to be the better Northeast team, whichever you're riding for, and it is good. Yeah, it's a shame the others aren't there as well still, because Workington was always a great trip, and the fans at Workington were brilliant. I used to love going up to that place, and it was always a decent track actually as well. It was a big track, yeah, very very fast, and yeah, Hull was always good as well. I loved going to Hull. I had a great time there, good memories from that place. My season there, 1997, so a few years back now, but I used to go and watch before that, because it had been open a couple of seasons prior to that, and I used to go down because it wasn't too far from Sunderland. We used to go and go and have a beer in the bar on a Wednesday night and watch the speedway there. It was again great people down there as well. I made some friends who I still speak to now and again from there. It was good. It's good, nice to see people from there as well, and all the other tracks as well, to be honest. But with Hull being closed a lot longer, it's the people there I haven't seen in a lot longer time now.
Bit of good news with the North Side track being built at Workington, which was a training track, and they're upgrading it, making it a bit bigger. And there's the hope of maybe getting some speedway there, even maybe National League or higher next season. So I know there's a lot of tracks closing down, and we've seen Oxford reopen for this season, and we are getting. It shows that you can get these tracks back if the will is there, and I guess the same is the still, even though the state of the stadium and everything that's going on with Coventry is absolutely ridiculous, that maybe one day, while ever it's still standing in whatever state it's in, that it's still possible to bring it back one day with Coventry, which must be a thing that you personally would love to see.
Definitely. I really do hope it comes back, because I don't really get a chance to go and watch any speedway these days, and if it was at Coventry, I probably would go, because it's literally less than 10 minutes from where I live. It would be great to see it come back. Great news for Oxford, like you said, Jimmy Courtney, along with whoever else is involved behind that, bringing it back there, brilliant. Really looking forward. I would like to go down and watch that at some point as well. And the same with Northside. The guys up there, I mean, it's all, I think from what I can gather, it's probably all voluntary work that people are doing as well. And they put so much of their own time, that they're never going to get back into this, because just for their passion on it, it's brilliant. And hopefully it will pay off for them, and it'll come good, and we'll get a bit of league racing there, because like I said, the trips to Workington were always great trips, and that part of the country, I love it up the lakes and around there. I used to sometimes go a day or two earlier and go camping for a few days, and then go and race, and then go back home. You know, if my fixtures permitted that, because I love it up that part of the world. And like I said before, there's some great people up there, and it'd be nice to see some of their faces again and have a bit of chat.
Yeah, good luck to everybody involved in that North Side project, and over the next year or two, I think hopefully see more and more things happening there, and Oxford, of course, back on the calendar. I'm really looking forward to going to Oxford myself with the British Speedway Network, and we'll be there for the first time in mid-April. I think it is the 20th of April for Oxford versus Poole. That's the match that's scheduled on the British Speedway Network. And don't forget, Oxford's going to be hosting the Championship Pairs this year as well. So if you're going to be going to Cardiff, then that's the fixture that traditionally was at Somerset on the Friday night. Well, it's going to be at Oxford this year, so make sure you're there for that. Again, a great occasion and great fixtures to have in the Speedway calendar. You're listening to Humans of Speedway. I'm Ian Brannan. My guest is Stuart Robson, and we'll talk next about Stuart's involvement in one of the great Speedway teams of the 90s, the Coventry Bees. But I think any other year Coventry would probably have cleaned up, but they came up against arguably the greatest league side in British Speedway that British Speedway's ever seen, in the Ipswich 98 team. So we'll talk about that next on Humans of Speedway.
There's nothing better than soft, comfy pajamas. And right now is the perfect time to stock up for the whole family. Because Bister is offering a big discount on their 100% organic cotton long sleeve pajamas. And you can get free shipping if you live in Bergen, Essex, Hudson, Morris, or Union counties of New Jersey. There's even free door-to-door delivery. So don't wait. Get 40% off with the code 40SPRING at my-bister.com.
This episode is brought to you by Simple Mobile. Tired of being tied down with a wireless contract? Switch to Simple Mobile and stay connected on a powerful nationwide 5G network. Unlimited talk, text, and data starts at $30 a month with no contracts, activation fees, or credit checks. Visit simplemobile.com today. Out with the old, in with the simple. Compatible 5G capable device and SIM required. Actual availability, coverage, and speed may vary. 5G network not available in all areas. 1 month equals 30 days. See terms and conditions at simplemobile.com.
You're listening to Humans of Speedway. I'm Ian Brannan. My guest in this episode is Stuart Robson, who, at the time of recording this, is getting ready for his farewell meeting, which takes place at Redcar Speedway on the 1st of April. If you're listening to this before the event, then do go along. If you're listening to it after the event, hopefully you enjoyed it. But Stuart's here to talk to us now about Coventry, because he rode for Coventry. He had a couple of spells at Coventry, and you were involved with the Bees, Stuart, in 1998, which is the season that we will remember as perhaps the greatest ever team assembled in British Speedway. Really demolished everyone in Ipswich, but the side that got the closest to holding a candle to them were the Coventry Bees, who were particularly also fairly well blessed with talent as well. And you were there to sort of run them close and kept them honest, didn't you?
We were. I think we were probably the team that was closer to them that year. We had a great team at Coventry, and obviously we didn't quite match Ipswich's team, which was probably one of the strongest British Speedway teams ever put together. It was very, very good team what they had. I think they had 3 GP riders at one point, didn't they? Or certainly 3 world-class riders, and then the people like Scott Nichols there behind them. You know, he was again himself a top British rider then. But the Coventry team was a close match to them, not quite there, but it was close. With, I think, did we have Brian Anderson there? I can't remember, was Billy Hamill there that year, and Greg Hancock.
Sean Tacey, and in one of the matches, Billy Hamill was in the side, but he was out, and you managed to organise guests for the meeting. I think this was the Knockout Cup meeting against Ipswich, and you managed to get Mark Loringham and Jason Crump as guests. It's not bad.
No, it's not at all, is it? No, I mean, you think of what they did between them, two extremely strong riders there. So, yeah, that's the level of that year. It was fantastic. It was great fun. And to be part of it was brilliant because I think I probably stayed at reserve all year, but with the team that we had, it was extremely difficult to get up into the top 5. But as long as I was part of it, that was good enough for me, and I loved it. On
a related note, I interviewed Chris Louis a little while ago, and in his episode, he was talking about how there was, I think the final match was it Kings Lynn? Was it Kings Lynn? Or it might have been Reading. I don't know. But anyway, Shane Parker, of course, who's ridden for both Ipswich and Kings Lynn, hid a fish inside the championship trophy, the league championship trophy. So Ipswich had won this trophy. They're holding it aloft, and then it's sort of sat there in the office like, what's that smell? And Shane Parker had hid a dead fish inside the trophy. So
yeah, I'd heard about that. Yes,
a little tidbit there.
Yeah, good old Shane, brilliant. Always up for a joke, proper joke he was.
But that whole era with Coventry. I mean, Coventry as well at the time, we got to remember that the Brandon Stadium was like the hosting the Grand Prix in that era as well. Of course, for many years it had hosted the British finals or intercontinental finals or whatever it was. It was the home of British Speedway at that time, wasn't it? It was the kind of what Bellevue is now, if you like, the national stadium. So for you to have this as your home circuit, that must have helped you out on your international ambitions in some way, because you got involved in the England setup as well, didn't you?
Yeah, so it was great. It was, like you say, it was sort of the home of British Speedway at the time, because it was probably the best stadium the British Speedway had to offer, and they had the GP there, and like you say, British finals amongst other World Championship rounds, and yes, it was. So you used to have some great meetings there. When I was there, though, I used to live in Sunderland still, so I was driving. When I first went there, I was driving backwards and forwards all the time. It was a long old way, but to go and watch a meeting, if I wanted to go and watch a British final or something at the time, it was 200 mile each way. It was a long way, but yeah, always good to have the big meetings at Coventry. And especially when I lived down here, it was great. They're just around the corner.
Yeah, I know, and obviously I'm not in a speedway way, but I worked for a radio station in Birmingham a few years ago, and living in Sunderland, so I'm very familiar with the old trek down there. It is a long old way there and back, but especially I guess though, if you get there and it's rained off, I mean those kind of journeys can't be much fun.
No, God, no, there's nothing worse. Especially when you actually get there and you they say, oh, it's off. You turn around and drive straight back home. And then we've all done it as riders. Every rider's done it. And, it's sometimes you might go to somewhere from Sunderland to Exeter. Oh, yeah, it's rained off. Turn around. No mobile phones back in them days either. So you literally you got there. And you didn't know until you got there that it was off. So there was nothing you could do. It was awful. That's one of the worst things. It wasn't as bad if you had another meeting the following day. If you might have been, and I say like Exeter on one day, and then maybe Reading or somewhere the next day, depending on what days they were running. At least you had the overnight stay. But yes, it was the amount of miles I've done, the amount of times I've been to Edinburgh from Coventry and been rained off and turned around and came back home. It's a lot of times. It's Glasgow as well, and they're the two furthest tracks from me now, and they seem to take forever to get there. So and you think, oh, when you get back, at least you got mobile phones these days, and you can get a phone call beforehand. But obviously, the track doesn't want to rain the meeting off; they want the meeting on, so they will sometimes leave it to the last possible moment, and to try, but it doesn't always happen. So. Yeah, that was one of the downsides to the sport.
Of course, it's not officially off until the referee says it's off as well, and sometimes that can be, as you say, a late check, and a lot of fuel burn. You rode too for Rye House in the mid 2000s. Was this around the era when a young Ty Woofenden was was knocking around? Because I seem to remember he was racing for Rye House at maybe around that era.
He did. It is, yes. I went to Rye House from Coventry in 2005. I did a meeting down there at the end of the year. The individual meeting, what they ran every year. I can't remember what it was called now. And I won it. I had a good night and I won it. Then I got a phone call from Len not long after. My brother was actually riding with Rye House at that time as well. And Len rang me, says, would you like to come and ride with us? And I thought, yeah, why not? Scott had loved it down there. He loved his time there. He loved the people there. Great, always very friendly. Looked after him really well. I thought, yeah, why not? Let's try it. And I had 2005 went there, and we had a great team. That was one of the top teams I've ridden for. One of the best teams, team spirit, everything else. We won the league, and we had a great season. Unfortunately, I crashed at the end of the season, and I dislocated my shoulder or something. I can't remember what it was. It was something, and it put me out for a little while. And right at the end of the season when all the cup finals and things were on. But yes, then the following season, 2006, was when Ty came there. I think it was 2006, or was it 2007? It was one or the other. But I had a big crash at Mildenhall quite early on in the season. Was April time in the season, and that put me out for 18 months, and I missed the rest of the season from there, unfortunately. So although I did ride in the same team as Ty for a bit, not for any great length of time, because that was me out, and it was a shame because that was another good team that Lennon put together that year. It was a very good team he put together. And it was great to have Ty as part of, like, say, 16-year-old coming in, fresh-faced, and he was doing well. He did extremely well that year.
Yeah, I remember seeing Rye House at Sheffield one year, and it was when Ty was racing. So maybe you were, maybe it was after your injury. I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly, but you could just tell that he was just a cut above. When you've got a 16-year-old who's going round within, half a second of the track record at Sheffield, you just think, this kid is noticeable. I think he was riding at reserve as well, so he was out like every other heat. We just saw him again and again and again, and you think, aye, there's something coming here, and obviously that proved to be true.
Yes, exactly. That was it. I mean, when you've got someone like him at reserve, you make the most of it. So he does get 7 rides every meeting. It was a bit like Danny King the year prior to that, to be honest. In 2005, Danny King started off at reserve on a 3-point average or whatever it was, and he finished the season on something like an 8-point average. He'd had such a good year, and I think Ty probably did something similar that year. But you've got to make the most of a rider of that caliber being at reserve, haven't you? And being in your team with you. And yeah, you get them out as often as possible. Ty was good. He had some good people behind him, his dad being one of them. And obviously his dad was a former rider. He knew a bit about the sport. He knew a lot of people in the sport already. And he had some good friends, and he managed to get a good team of people to get him started. And it was a good start for Ty, and he capitalised on it, and he did really well from it.
And if you'd like to find out more about Ty Woofenden's early days, in the early days of this podcast series, a couple of years ago now, the 3rd episode, we spoke with Neil Machin, of course, legendary promoter at Sheffield, but also Ty Woofenden's godfather. And he talks about the early days with Ty. And considering that relationship, you might expect Ty to have been a prolific Sheffield rider. And he explains why that never was the case, although Ty Woofenden did once ride for Sheffield. Did you know that? It's a great pub quiz question, but find out the story in that 3rd episode with Neil Machin. My thanks to Stuart Robson for joining us in this episode. Now, this episode slightly curtailed because we had some technical problems with the final part of our chat where we talk about the Dream Speedway meeting. So what I can tell you what Stuart Robson's answers were. So in all of our episodes, we ask these same questions. So if Stuart was having his dream meeting, where would he hold it? And the track he chose was Redcar, which is handy because that's where he's holding his farewell meeting on the 1st of April. And I said, if you're going to put that track in any stadium, where would you put it? And he said, Cardiff, in the Principality Stadium. And did you know that the Redcar track is almost exactly the same size and dimensions as the Cardiff track? But the difference being Redcar's got a bit more banking in it. And so we're talking about that, and Stuart spoke about how he was involved in a trial run Grand Prix at Cardiff. Now, this was like a Grand Prix that nobody saw. So incredible. And he rode in this Grand Prix meeting where they were testing things out, testing the track out and all that kind of stuff. And he rode in a Grand Prix at the Principality Stadium in Cardiff, and nobody saw it, along with a lot of other riders that are from British Speedway at the time as well. So we asked him who would be in his dream team, and here's Stuart Robson's dream team: Hans Nielsen, Eric Gunderson, Martin Dixon, Mark Loram, Gary Havelock, Chris Harris and Craig Cook he chose. Craig Ackroyd would be the referee, which is handy because Craig Ackroyd will be the referee at Stuart Robson's farewell meeting in Redcar. We said he's going to change any rules. It didn't really have a burning one, but certainly having starts pulled back for no reason was certainly a popular one, and that has been a popular one with many riders. And a team to be the opposition for his dream team. This is an actual team that has existed at some point, and it's a toss-up actually. So you can choose Ipswich 98 or Kings Lynn 2005. And that's where we ended up on this episode. And my thanks to Stuart Robson for joining us this time round. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you're able to go to his farewell meeting 1st of April, which is not long from the point of this being released, but so you may be listening to this after the event, but if not, go along and have a great evening, a great lineup of riders. And you'll have a fantastic evening, I'm sure. And don't forget to listen to our previous episodes on Humans of Speedway as well. We've got lots for you to go at, not least the most recent episodes that we've put out in this series. The most recent episode was with Katie Gordon, which coincided with International Women's Day, but she's going to be racing for the Redcar Cubs and is hoping to, at some point, break through into either a National League side or a Championship side at some point soon. We also spoke recently with Neil Vatcher, the Great Britain Under-21 manager, and also coordinator at the SCB as well, so he's ultimately in charge of all the referees. We spoke with Josh Orty, Paul Ackroyd recently as well. Now the Ben Fund Bonanza is coming up very, very soon as well, so find out more about the Ben Fund. We spoke with Lewis Kerr, Tom Brennan, Adam Ellis, Jordan Jenkins, all recent episodes on the series of Humans of Speedway. Thanks very much for joining us. We're back with another one very soon, and well, enjoy your Speedway. At the time of releasing this, things are starting to happen, and hey, 2022 is going to be a busy year, but take us with you when you're heading to your matches for a little bit of entertainment on the way, eh? Thanks for listening. We'll join you on the next episode of Humans of Speedway.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
The Hit a Big Scratcher from the Virginia Lottery could be a big hit for you. The game gives you the chance to win up to $1 million. Virginia Lottery Scratchers. Everyday wins. Visit a lottery retailer near you. For odds and more information, visit VALottery.com.